Have you ever had to let go of something you loved more than life itself? Have you ever made a choice that felt like dying? Have you ever placed your most precious treasure into hands you couldn't see and walked away not knowing if you'd ever hold it again? There is a mother in the Bible who did exactly that. She held her 3-month-old baby boy in her arms. She kissed his soft face one last time. She breathed in his scent, memorizing it. She placed him in a basket woven from reeds. And then, with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, she set him on the waters of the Nile River, the same river where thousands of Hebrew baby boys had been drowned by Pharaoh's soldiers. Her name was Jochebed, and what she did that day would change the course of history. Jochebed was not a prophet with divine visions. She was not a queen with political power. She was not a warrior with a sword. She was a slave, a Hebrew woman living under brutal Egyptian oppression. A mother in a world where having a son was a death sentence. But when the choice came, when she had to decide between clinging to her child in fear or releasing him in faith, she chose something that defies all human instinct. She let go. And there's something I'll only reveal at the end of this video, something about what happened to Jochebed after she placed that basket in the water. Something about the moment she thought she'd lost everything, but discovered God's plan was bigger than her worst fear. Something that will change how you see every impossible choice you're facing right now. So stay with me, because the story of the mother who let go but God brought back begins now. To understand Jochebed, we need to go back to Egypt, to one of the darkest periods in Israel's history, to a time when being born was a crime. Imagine the scene. The bricks are scorching under the relentless Egyptian sun. Thousands of Hebrew slaves bend their backs, making bricks without straw, their hands raw and bleeding. The crack of the whip cutting through the hot air. The groans of exhausted men who work from sunrise to sunset without rest. The cries of women watching their husbands beaten for working too slowly. The smell of mud and straw mixed with sweat and blood. The taste of dust in the air. The weight of slavery pressing down on an entire people who once knew freedom. And then at night, in the cramped slave quarters, a sound that should bring joy, but now brings only terror. The cry of a newborn baby, specifically the cry of a baby boy, because Pharaoh had issued a decree that turned every Hebrew home into a house of mourning. The book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 22, records the command with chilling simplicity. Every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Not some boys, not criminals, not rebels, every single boy. The moment a Hebrew woman gave birth to a son, Egyptian soldiers would come. They would rip the baby from his mother's arms, and they would throw him into the Nile River to drown. Can you imagine living in a world where having a son meant watching him die, where pregnancy brought not anticipation but dread? Where every Hebrew mother prayed she would have a daughter because a son meant death. And into this nightmare, into this genocide, Jochebed gave birth to a son. Exodus chapter 2 verse 2 says, "She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months." A fine child. The Hebrew word means beautiful, healthy, perfect. She looked at her newborn son and saw life. She saw promise. She saw God's fingerprints all over this child, and she knew deep in her soul that this boy was meant for something. So she made a choice. She would not surrender him to Pharaoh's murderers. She would hide him. She would fight for his life. She would believe that God had a plan, even when everything around her screamed that there was no hope. But hiding a baby is not easy. And hiding a baby for 3 months is a miracle in itself. Can you imagine what those 3 months must have been like? Every morning, waking up with her heart pounding, praying he wouldn't cry when the soldiers patrolled. Every afternoon, keeping him quiet while Egyptian guards walked past her door. Every night, jumping at every sound, terrified that someone had heard, that someone knew, that today would be the day. They came for her son, 3 months of living on the edge of terror, 3 months of miracle after miracle, 3 months where every sunrise felt like victory and every sunset brought fresh fear for tomorrow. She must have held him extra tight those nights. She must have memorized every detail of his face, the curve of his tiny fingers, the way his eyes followed her, the sound of his breathing as he slept. She must have wondered every single day how much longer she could keep him safe. Have you ever lived in constant fear? Have you ever had to protect something precious while feeling completely powerless? But here's the thing about babies. They grow. Their cries get louder, their movements get bigger, their presence becomes harder and harder to conceal. And Jochebed knew the truth that every mother knows. The time had come. She could no longer hide him. The miracle was over, and now she faced an impossible choice. She could keep hiding him and risk discovery, which meant death for her son and possibly for her entire family. She could surrender him to the soldiers and watch them drown him in the Nile, or she could do something that made absolutely no logical sense. She could put him in God's hands and let go. Exodus chapter 2 verse 3 records what happened next. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. But those words, simple, brief, matter-of-fact, they don't capture the weight of what Jochebed did. Picture the moment in vivid, aching detail. Her hands weaving a basket from papyrus reeds, the rough texture cutting into her palms as she worked. The smell of tar and pitch, thick, pungent, suffocating, as she waterproofed every inch, making sure no water could seep through. Her tears falling onto the basket as she worked, mingling with the tar, each one a prayer she couldn't put into words. Before we continue, if this story is already stirring something deep inside you, if you're beginning to see yourself in Jochebed's impossible choice, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will reveal something powerful about what it means to let go in faith, about how God sees what we release, and about how your act of surrender might be the very thing God is waiting for to do the impossible. And you'll want more stories like this, stories of biblical mothers, impossible faith, and a God who catches what we let fall. The basket was finished, small, fragile, waterproof, but barely. It looked impossibly inadequate for the task ahead. How could this tiny basket protect her son from the current, from the crocodiles, from discovery, from drowning? But it was all she had. A basket, a prayer, and a faith that felt more like desperation. She wrapped her baby in soft cloth. She held him one more time, feeling the weight of him in her arms, the warmth of his small body against her chest. She breathed in his scent, milk and innocence, and everything pure in a world gone mad. Her tears fell on his face. She kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his tiny hands. And then she did the unthinkable. She placed him in the basket, she closed the lid, and with her daughter Miriam by her side, she walked to the edge of the Nile River. The morning sun was just rising, casting golden light across the water. The Nile stretched wide and powerful, its current strong, its depths dark. This river had swallowed thousands of Hebrew babies. This river was the instrument of Pharaoh's genocide. This river was death. And Jochebed was about to place her son on its waters. Can you imagine what went through her mind in that moment? The voices of doubt screaming that this was insane. The logic telling her this would end in tragedy. The fear clawing at her chest, begging her to turn back, to keep hiding him, to find another way. But there was no other way. She had reached the end of her own strength, the end of her own plans, the end of what she could control. And so she did what faith always requires. She let go. She bent down. She placed the basket among the reeds at the river's edge. She watched it float, wobbling slightly, barely stable. She stood there, her hands empty now, her arms aching for the weight of her son. She told Miriam to stay hidden nearby and watch what would happen to him. And then she walked away, each step feeling like death, each breath burning in her chest, trusting a God she couldn't see, with a son she couldn't protect. What kind of faith does that take? What kind of surrender? What kind of love lets go when every instinct screams to hold on? But here's where the story takes a turn that will make you weep. Because what happened next proves that when we release what we love into God's hands, He doesn't just catch it, He transforms it. Exodus chapter 2, verses 5 and 6 record the moment everything changed. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. "The daughter of Pharaoh, the princess of Egypt, the daughter of the man who ordered the death of every Hebrew boy. She was the one who found Moses." Picture the scene unfolding in vivid detail. The princess and her attendants walking to the river for their morning bath, their fine linen garments flowing, their jewelry glinting in the sunlight. The sudden sight of a basket floating among the reeds, unusual, out of place, clearly not belonging there. The princess's curiosity, her command to retrieve it, her slave wading into the water, pulling the basket to shore. The moment the lid opened, the baby's cry piercing the morning air, and the princess's heart softening in an instant at the sight of this Hebrew child. She knew, of course she knew. She said it herself, "This is one of the Hebrew babies." This was a child her father had ordered killed. Saving him meant defying the decree. This was dangerous, politically complicated, potentially treasonous. But she felt sorry for him. And that compassion, that divine spark of mercy in a pagan princess, was exactly what God had orchestrated. And then comes one of the most stunning moments in all of Scripture. Exodus chapter 2, verses 7 through 9. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." Did you catch that? Let me say it again slower, because the irony is so thick you can taste it. Miriam, watching from the reeds just as her mother instructed, stepped forward with a perfectly timed suggestion. "Would you like a Hebrew woman to nurse him?" The princess agreed. Miriam ran to get Jochebed, and Pharaoh's daughter, the daughter of the man who wanted all Hebrew boys dead, handed Moses back to his own mother and said, "I will pay you to take care of him." The enemy paid Jochebed to raise her own son. The palace of death became the source of provision. The river of drowning became the river of deliverance. And the mother who let go in faith received her child back in a way she never could have imagined. She didn't just get her son back. She got him back with royal protection. She got him back with financial provision. She got him back with the full resources of Pharaoh's household behind him. She got him back knowing that no soldier would ever come to her door again because he was under the princess's protection. And more than that, she got paid to do what her heart was already desperate to do: love him, nurse him, raise him, teach him about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For the next several years, Jochebed raised Moses in her own home, on Pharaoh's payroll, preparing him for the destiny God had planned. She taught him who he was. She taught him whose he was. She planted seeds of faith that would grow into the man who would stand before Pharaoh and demand, "Let my people go." The same river that had swallowed thousands became the river that saved one. The same palace that ordered genocide became the place that protected God's deliverer. The same enemy who wanted to kill Hebrew boys paid for the upbringing of the very man who would destroy him. This is how God works. This is what happens when we let go in faith. This is the power of surrender. Jochebed wasn't just a mother who saved her son. She was a living picture of something profound about how God redeems what we release. Jochebed had to place Moses in a basket and trust God with the outcome. We too are called to place our most precious treasures, our deepest fears, our greatest loves into God's hands and trust Him with what happens. Next, Jochebed couldn't see the plan, couldn't see the princess approaching, couldn't see Miriam's courage, couldn't see the moment her son would be handed back to her. We too often can't see how God is working. We just have to let go and trust. This is exactly what God asks of us through Jesus Christ. When we surrender our lives, our plans, our futures, our loved ones, when we stop trying to control and start trusting, God doesn't just preserve what we release. He transforms it into something greater than we could have planned. The Apostle Paul understood this. In the letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 6 and 7, he writes, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Present your requests, place them before God, let go, and trust that He guards what you release. God could have saved Moses in 100 different ways. He could have struck down Pharaoh. He could have sent a plague early. He could have miraculously hidden Moses without Jochebed's involvement. But He chose to work through a mother's impossible act of faith. He chose to honor her surrender with a miracle that would echo through eternity. And that means your act of letting go, whatever you're holding too tightly right now, that might be the very thing God is waiting for to do something extraordinary. Because here's the truth Jochebed teaches us. God doesn't ask us to let go so He can take away. He asks us to let go so He can multiply, protect, transform, and bring back in ways we never imagined. So what do we learn from Jochebed? First, letting go is not giving up. It's the highest form of trust. Jochebed didn't abandon Moses. She didn't quit. She didn't surrender to despair. She released him into God's care because she understood something profound. Her hands were too small, but God's hands were big enough. If you're holding on to something so tightly that your hands hurt, so tightly that fear is crushing you, so tightly that you can't sleep at night, maybe God is asking you to open your hands. Not because He wants to take it away, but because He wants to do something with it that your grip is preventing. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you trust someone greater. Second, faith doesn't mean knowing the outcome. It means trusting the one who does. When Jochebed placed Moses in that basket, she had no idea what would happen. She didn't know about the princess. She didn't know about Miriam's boldness. She didn't know she'd get her son back. She just knew she had done everything she could, and now it was God's turn. You don't need to see the full plan to take the next step of faith. You don't need to know how God will work to trust that He will work. You just need to do what He's asking right now and leave the results to Him. That's faith. That's trust. That's surrender. Finally, God's plans are always bigger than our fears. Jochebed was afraid Moses would drown, would die, would be lost forever. She couldn't have imagined he would become a prince of Egypt, be educated in Pharaoh's household, learn leadership and strategy, and then return to lead the greatest deliverance in Israel's history. Her fear saw death. God's plan saw destiny. And the same is true for you. Whatever you're afraid of losing, whatever you're terrified to release, whatever you think will destroy you if you let it go, God sees a bigger picture. He sees how that surrender positions you for blessing. He sees how that release opens the door for miracles. He sees what you can't see yet. So the question isn't, what if I lose it? The question is, what if holding on is preventing God from doing what only He can do? If Jochebed's story has touched your heart today, I want you to do 3 things. First, leave a comment below and write, "I choose faith over fear." Because maybe today is the day you finally release what you've been clinging to. Maybe today is the day you place that relationship, that dream, that situation, that loved one in God's hands and walk away trusting Him. Maybe today is the day your faith becomes bigger than your fear. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you forgotten biblical characters with life-changing lessons, stories of impossible faith that became undeniable miracles, messages that challenge you to trust God with what you cannot control, truths that transform how you see surrender, obedience, and divine timing, stories that prove God is always working, even when you can't see it. Third, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is holding on too tightly because they're afraid. Someone who needs to know that letting go isn't losing, it's trusting. Someone who needs to hear that God catches what we release in faith. Someone who is facing an impossible choice and needs to know that surrender to God is never surrender to fear. Because this isn't just a story from thousands of years ago. This is your invitation today. This is God asking you, will you trust me with what you love most? Jochebed started as a terrified mother, hiding her son from murderers. She became a woman of impossible faith, who placed her baby on a river of death and watched God turn it into a river of life. She became the mother who raised the deliverer of Israel. She became the woman whose surrender changed the course of history. The difference? One choice, one moment, one act of letting go when everything in her screamed to hold on. That's the difference between living in fear and living in faith. Fear says, if I let go, I'll lose everything. If I release control, disaster will strike. If I trust God with this, He'll take it away and never give it back. I have to hold on. I have to manage this. I have to stay in control. Faith says, if I hold on, I limit what God can do. If I try to control this, I prevent the miracle. If I trust God with my most precious treasure, He'll do something far greater than I could protect or plan. I can let go. I can release control. I can trust His hands. Jochebed could have kept hiding Moses. She could have clung to him even when it became impossible. She could have let fear dictate her choices, but she chose faith. She chose trust. She chose to believe that God's plan was bigger than her fear. And because she let go, Moses lived. Because she released him, he was protected. Because she trusted God, she got him back in a way that defied every human expectation. Thousands of years have passed since Jochebed wove a basket, placed her son inside, and set him on the waters of the Nile. But the message echoes unchanged across the centuries to reach you today. God is trustworthy. God sees what you're facing. God knows what you're afraid to lose. And God is asking you to place it in His hands. Today, God is asking you the same question He asked Jochebed. Will you let go? And the answer is, you. No matter how impossible it feels, no matter how much it terrifies you, no matter how tightly you've been holding on, you can open your hands. You can release what you love into God's care. You can choose faith over fear, because what you're holding on to in fear, God wants to hold in love. What you're protecting with white knuckles, God wants to bless with open hands. What you're afraid to lose, God wants to transform into something greater than you can imagine. Fear will steal your peace. Control will rob you of God's best. The grip of terror prevents the grace of miracles. Jochebed shows us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop fighting and start trusting. The most powerful act is not holding on tighter, but letting go completely. Sometimes the miracle only comes when we place what we love most into the hands of the God who loves us most. And here's what Jochebed discovered that day on the banks of the Nile, what every person who has ever let go in faith eventually learns. God doesn't ask us to release what we love so He can take it away. He asks us to let go so He can do what only He can do. He asks us to trust Him so He can show us that His plans are always, always, always better than our fears. May the story of Jochebed remind you today that the God who caught Moses in a basket on the Nile River is the same God who catches everything you release in faith. And He doesn't just catch it, He transforms it. He protects it. He multiplies it. And often he brings it back in ways that prove he was always worthy of your trust. God bless you deeply. Until the next story.